Welcome to another episode of Extra Hot The Grill, where I'm here interviewing some awesome gospel artists. And today I've got two of them on the show with me, not one, but two, and it's going to be a good one. So I've got OC to Dex with me, and I've got Joe, and I'm super excited to have these guys with us. So hi guys, how are you doing?
What's going on? What's going on, Meek Heroes?
Yeah. You guys good?
Yeah, Dexter's the more animated one of the two of us. So.
Oh, nice. Well, you seem to balance each other well then.
Yeah.
That's cool. So tell us about yourselves. I want to know your names, the genre of music that you both bring into the table, and how long you've both been creating music for, individually and collectively.
Cool.
So I go first. O-side to Dex.
O-side. Oh, sorry, I said it wrong.
But there was that dope accent, so I ain't say anything. I was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
So I always grew up doing more like the lyrics, underground hip hop side of things. That's where I started off at. I was an underground artist that worked with, I'm not more on the conscious side of things before I became a Christian. I was part of a label called Raucous. And I worked with a lot of known underground acts. And toured, and that's what I did for a living for a while before I gave my life to Christ. But that was probably, what really got me into music was when I got that deal and I really started taking it serious. And I was like, man, I could really do this. But I wasn't really focusing on trying to deliver the gospel with it. We had a conscious message at the time, but we weren't glorifying God. And that's part of the, we can probably do another interview about that, how, my testimony in between things. But I want to focus more on the Meek Heroes side of things, but it's a blessing to be here too. But that's how I got started on it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And my name's Joe. I started in metal bands. So I was a lead singer and in and out of different metal, rock, and punk bands, actually. And so I got my start as a screamer. And then I fell in love with the Deftones and started to kind of learn more to sing. And then their lead singer started kind of rapping. And I really tapped into a little bit more of the hip hop genre itself, and then started to kind of dabble and was always doing kind of a rock, metal, hip hop type thing. And so I started in bands probably when I was about 18 is when I really started. I know I don't look a day over 18, but I'm 41.
You don't.
And, right, perfect. So been doing music for a long time, and really just started a few years ago to really dive into hip hop and trying to get as experimental as I could, bringing in certain elements. And that's really when Dexter and I came together, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go. But that's when we decided, hey, we need to kind of merge our worlds together for a number of reasons, but definitely on the musical front. So. Yeah.
So how long ago was it when you guys became and started the Meek Heroes?
It's been we officially started actually like right when the lockdowns and the pandemic thing started to hit, but we had been talking about it and kind of laying the foundation and groundwork prior to that. But we actually recorded our first song like just shortly after the national lockdown here in the States. So that would have been March of 2020 is when we started recording. But we had been talking about it a little bit prior to that, and praying through it and seeing what the Lord would have.
Absolutely, I love that. So between the two of you and also individually, like what music or who and what artists have inspired you along the way in your musical journeys? Like who would you say is pinpointed artist that you've looked to and been like,
I'm weird. I listen to some of everything. That's a good question. I don't really have, I don't want to say you're typical hip hop artist. I don't even really like listening to myself too much, to be honest with you. A lot of people, oh man, you're an amazing artist, but I'm like, I listen to some, all type of different things. Old school, I listen to Bobby Womack, a lot of praise and worship. Joe really got me listening to a lot of rock. Shout out to Relent, I really listen to a lot of different soulful, things. I like all type of genres. Ivan Leans, even I listen to all type of things. Gregory Porter. That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I had a father and a mother who were very into music, and my dad was very into classic rock, and my mom was very into country. And so I grew up listening to, you know, all the classic rock artists, and was a really big like Pink Floyd fan, Led Zeppelin, you know, really just enjoyed that genre. Wasn't huge on the countryside, but there were a few artists. I really liked Johnny Cash, and then as I kind of kept going, before getting really into metal, you know, I was more into, you know, Herbie Hancock, and really getting into some like jazz and fusion and some different styles, and just kind of all across the board. And then, like I said, I came across the Deftones, and even Korn. Not that they're Christ-centered representatives here, but that's where I got my start, and that was well before I came to faith in Christ. And then after coming to Christ, you know, musically across the board with like Memphis May Fire, O Sleeper, and then I came into Lecrae, Andy Mineo, and some of these cats that have really been influential just in my walk, but also just musically as I've grown in Christ. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm really intrigued by this whole thing of how your faith has shaped your music, because it sounds like both of you have gone on journeys where you've both maybe been in more secular side of things, but actually slowly as you've gone on your journey with Jesus, it's actually that's what's really influenced your music. I'd love to hear more about that from you both, of like how your faith is impacting your music or has along the way, and what that's looked like for you practically as well.
A lot of people don't know when we first started Meek Heroes, before we even started it, me and Joe just decided to fellowship and just come together and really, like, because we was used to always trying to do things from an industry perspective. And that's all I did at first. And, you know, it was just like, okay, how can I make my music more successful and go about doing marketing? Because, you know, I was a creative director for a while for a record label also, you know, so everything was from a business perspective. And then when I stepped away from it, it was just like, okay, you know, God gave me this ability and I want to use it correctly to glorify him, you know. And then when we came together, it was like, okay, let's take this time to step away and really pray about what we should be doing. And we fellowship. We didn't even want to really do music at first. We were just getting together, going over scripture and, you know, going through different things, different, you know, stuff we were struggling with at the time, and just coming together as, you know, brothers in Christ. And that's how the group started. You know, we really didn't even really focus on, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to put this single out. And then let's make sure we talk about Jesus. We really was really just focused on glorifying him in that process. It was a really, you know, really good thing. And, you know, a lot of people don't know, a lot of times when we get together, you know, the main focus isn't organizing the album. We forget about the album. Sometimes we just talk about what we've been studying. And then, you know, the last 10 minutes, we're kind of like, hey, oh yeah, we got to do this, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and that's been huge. So, I mean, we're Christ first. I mean, that's it. And as a result, we want to love God well, and we want to love others well. And so that fellowship time and being able to really just get in, that has actually helped us musically, exponentially, because we're having that fellowship first, because we're meeting with the Lord, and that we're doing this with him, not for him. Right? Like, this isn't, oh, we got to put out this music for God. No, we want to do this with God. And so this has to be prayerful. This has to be, crafted with him, you know, and that process, and really the Holy Spirit's leading. And so when we get to write a song, it's not just, oh, we want to write this banging track. It's what is God putting on our hearts that we even really want to talk about, and let's meet with him, and let's hash this out scripturally before we ever sit down and start writing, you know. And so like when we have a single, you know, it's hashtag Stay Meek, right? And for Dexter and I, as we watched everything just start to implode, you know, in 2020, it was like, what's the call for us as Christ followers? Well, we need to stay meek, right? Like we need to remember that God is in control, and that we are to love him and love others. And we're not going to do that by, you know, shoving our political views in people's faces, or just doing it from a worldly information perspective. We're going to do that by preaching Christ through word and deed. And that we need to stay meek, which again, with the Meek Heroes theme, it's like, how do you live you know, as a Christ follower in today's society, right? Like, because I can't go back and say how you do it then. I can tell you how we can do it here based on the biblical principles, and that shapes what we do musically, because for us, music is a tool that ultimately is used to reach people for Christ, either from an edification standpoint or from a evangelistic standpoint. And so that's really where we're leaning.
I really love that, because it sounds like it's been a journey of surrender with that particular area of like making music. It's like more about, okay, we know we can make music, but actually who are we making the music for, and who has gifted us this gift of making music? And it's looking at who's, you know, the best thing to do is go to the manufacturer to be like, can you help us do this even better?
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
And that sounds like the journey that you guys have been on, and I love that. And it's actually stripping it back to get to the heart of things, and figuring out what's the why of all of this. Like, is the why for our own glory? Is the why for marketing? Like, because all those things are like so secondary to anything when you come when it comes back to it. So, and I think your music will have more impact actually when you get to the heart of what you're doing as well. That sounds like an amazing journey of surrender that you guys are still going on as well. As you go with it, I love that. That's really powerful as well. Even like artists that will maybe watch these interviews that are maybe upcoming, I think a lot of artists maybe can miss out on that and be making gospel music but without actually doing it with God. Like, but on the surface it's for God. And so actually that's really important what you're saying, and it's quite bold. Although you're called Meek Heroes, it's really bold what you're doing, and I love that. I think that's brilliant. Now with the show Extra Hot, we featured some of your tracks, and I've reviewed them and I've really loved it. And looking at music, I always look at what's the messaging behind music. I'm really passionate about that we have good messaging for young people, for all age people really, especially within our gospel music, but that's relevant and cool as well. But with your music, what would you say are like the key messages that you guys look to push forward within your tracks and within the movement of merging two genres, very, very different genres together?
Well, of course, we kind of touched on it already. Of course, Jesus. Most definitely. And then the sacrifice, the justification through Christ, and people truly understanding that we only saved by grace alone, and our actions have nothing to do with that, And whenever we doing our lyrics, we make sure that, with sound doctrine within it. You get a lot of artists, I'm not saying no names, they just they might dabble a little bit of Jesus on there. They just say whatever they want to say and just say, God blessed me or something like that, And like, we really want to be specific about that. It's like, hey man, Christ is the way,
And sometimes it's unpacking the jargon as well, isn't it? Lyrically in music. I think it's really important to unpack the jargon that can be within Christian music, to be like, no way, let's break this down within our lyrics to actually really get to the root of what that even means. Like, I like that a lot.
Yeah, we've kind of had like what we've looked at like Paul Barnabas, Paul Timothy type relationship, and so even when we come into our music, we want it to be, at least as Dexter said, doctrinally sound, as we see the scriptures laid out, but also natural. So I do a public speaking ministry, and I am blessed to be able to go to local churches and do pulpit supply and preach. And so with hip hop, one of the things that I love about it is it's an opportunity to write a message. It's an opportunity to essentially preach in musical form. And we're big on that, and just one of the cool things with Dexter is he's really good at like illustration and metaphor, where I'm a little bit more like just straight in your face, and so we balance each other out in that regard, where Dexter will drop those cool metaphors and really kind of hit that the hip hop piece that people are looking for. They want the metaphor, the illustrative piece. And I'm more like, okay, let's take that illustration. Now I'm gonna blow it up and I'm gonna get into like, this is the brass tacks. This is what that means. Right. And so, we really try to have that balance within our music of like, we want to make sure the message is clear and concise, and yet still have some stylistic flair that is appealing to just the ear, that someone's listening to it and they're like, oh man, that bar is dope. But then when they listen, they're like, wait, that bar was actually really pretty intense. Like there's a lot more behind that. It's not just words on a page. And that's huge for us because, whether we eat or drink or whatever we do it all to God's glory. And that includes our recording process and our writing process and the whole nines.
I love that. Now, during you were saying that Meek Heroes began like towards the beginning of the pandemic, really, like as in practically, but you'd already been laying the foundations for that to actually come out publicly. Now, during the pandemic, how was that for you guys with forming and putting your stuff out? Like, what were some of the challenges that you had, or what was some of the, like, have you got any key highlights that you can share with us of how God showed up and with all of that?
Yeah. Dexter, you want to go first?
Yeah.
I thought she said Joe, but I ain't know.
No, either one of you.
Oh, okay. I can go first. Okay, for sure. Yeah. Some people know, some people don't. Me and my wife, we work in a hospital, so we were basically on the front lines throughout the whole pandemic, so but first, praying through everything before we went into work, being hands-on with these people, being able to pray with them and shed that light of God always being involved in through the good and bad, and being able to take that to my lyrics, while the recording process started was amazing, and seeing how impactful just alone we were from just doing simple things, from people not being able to get out their cars and help them get into the hospital and, and them being stressed out. And I say, okay, look, can I pray for you? And then applying the idea of, okay, I'm a Meek hero, and I matter. So that was awesome being able to do that. And it really helped. It's so much confusion that goes on online and people saying all these different things. And it's like, hey, I'm there. I've been there since day one, me and my wife. And I see what's going on. And, it's, praise God, that we've been able to get through all of this. But being able to take that back to the group, in prayer and through the ministry and music was amazing. And it really makes you appreciate everything that you do and the gift that you do have, to produce fruit for the kingdom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even just from like a creative perspective, I mean, Dexter being in Detroit and me being in Kalamazoo, we were already like working on things online collectively. And so we are so thankful for the technology to be able to put this all together. So we would do Zoom calls. We would be on the phone for hours just talking through this stuff and just fellowshipping that way, since we couldn't be there in person. But we already were accustomed to doing things via the internet anyway. We just realized, hey, bro, like the Lord has put us together. We love our time of fellowship. The music was a natural progression. And so what are we going to do and what's this going to look like? And then we released our first single called The Signal. And it's this idea that we're calling all Meek heroes. Like it's time for us to rise up as Christ followers, right? Not rise up in protest and rebellion. No, rise up for Christ. Now is the time. And so we wanted to lead out because we recognized the times that we're in. We wanted to lead out with this call to furthering your relationship with Christ, that it is time to rise up in the name of Jesus, to go out into this world as a disciple and to preach the gospel. I mean, it comes right out the gate with the Great Commission. I mean, that song is literally like, look, like, here it is, y'all. Like, the darker the world gets, the brighter we are to shine in this world, right? And that we are to make the most of our time because the days are evil, right? Like Paul is clear on this. And how do we do that? Well, we make the most of these opportunities by sharing the love of Christ through word and deed with all those we encounter. And can we do that even in the midst of being, shut down? Can we do that in the midst of, in the midst of not even be able to have this interaction on a real level? And so we've challenged people to get creative, challenging. I work for Youth for Christ, and our president came out and said, look, it's replace, not cancel.
Yes.
Right. Like instead of life doesn't stop. We just work on replacing. How do we get creative to do that? And Dexter and I were like, let's rise to this call that God's put on our heart to get creative.
Yeah.
And try to reach people even in the midst of some craziness.
And I think it's so powerful as well, because like you guys were saying earlier, like music is such a tool. And there's a lot of people that maybe won't step foot in church or maybe won't approach church, but they'll listen to music. There's something about creativity that actually a lot, especially young people, I think, are really switched on by. They're attracted to creativity, and there's something about that's very inviting as well than just like, come to this meeting and we'll preach. But actually it's like, wait, actually listen to this track and then let's have a convo about it, kind of thing. I think there's just an inviting like welcome that's there that kind of can get missed sometimes within church culture. I love that. I think that's amazing.
While I'm at work, we call it verbal judo. I use verbal judo. You know, it's like kind of like customer service, get people to do things. It's like the verbal judo to your spirit. You know, you know, music.
Literally.
So it's just, you want to open up your heart. You know, do that way.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So, what does the future?
And we've been pretty.
Go on, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've been really blessed to hear feedback from people, you know, just musically, where they're like, man, like, I don't listen to Christian hip hop, but I really love what y'all are doing, you know, or like, I was talking to Dex, like, my brother is not a believer, but he's out listening to our music and is like, man, this is really good. And he's sharing it with his friends. And you're like, hey, that's cool. Like, because we know the gospel's going out, you know. We praise God for that, because like you said, music being a tool, it's people are more responsive to that. It's the same thing where in our church, we believe in crockpot evangelism, right? Like, I'm going to invite you to my house and I'm going to walk with you and pray with you and I'm going to share the gospel. And when you come to Christ, then comes the church invite, right? Then comes the, hey, you should come to church because that's where you get fed, right? But you don't know Jesus, you're more apt to accept an invite to my house to go play some board games and have a dope meal, you know. And music is the same way, where it can really open that pathway to a furthering, deeper conversation that could lead to someone coming to Christ and stepping foot in a church.
Absolutely. And then
love that.
Opening up to the community of people that just love God and want to love people. And what would you guys say is the future of Meek Heroes then? What's the future looking like? Maybe the immediate future, but also like with this that you've started in the pandemic, where do you see it going?
Putting our faith in God, whatever He wants us to do.
Amen.
We pray about that all the time. You know, you lean not on my own understanding, lean on His. You know, and that's the big question right there. Really, I don't want to say something cliche like, oh man, you know, we got all these new records and music we've been working on, but you know, Jesus can come back anytime. We don't know the time nor people. So, you know, the Lord's will be done. As long as I get to glorify Him, and we plan to do that as long as He let us. You know? And
have you got some new music coming out then within the month or?
Oh yeah. We got the church. It's dropping September 17th. It's going to be, you know, worldwide, everywhere for everybody to download for you and yours. And
we'll be getting it on the show, I'm sure.
I'm excited about that too. So
it's gonna be so good.
Man, we got a coloring book also, Joe.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about this. Tell us about this coloring book. Where can people get this? Is your time to plug, guys. Like
cool. Yeah, we're excited about the comic book. So like the concept of the album is the church, and we have an illustrator by the name of Jason who's just so talented. And we had this idea because if you see any of our stuff, we have the kind of the comic book type feel. Like we really our superpower is Christ in us, right? So that's why we look kind of just like regular. You know, we got some dope outfits. We kind of look superhero-y, but our power is from Christ. Dexter and I were talking, and he had this idea like, what if we had this mech that was actually a representative, kind of like, you know, Power Rangers, like they all come together and we call that the church. And so we named the mech the church, right? And then from there we started talking and we're like, hey, we've got all these awesome illustrations. We get to watch the whole process of his illustrative process. So we know the lines. And Dexter was like, we could take those and we could maybe make a coloring book out of that. And it was like, wait, that's a great idea. So we reached out to our illustrator and he made them like color book format, you know. And we put this together because we want to impact young people, right? And no one's too young. And we're like, we got these dope characters, right? The mech is ridiculous, and people will get to see more of that artwork and all this kind of stuff. But then but you know, how can we then bring this in and use Bible verses and, you know, word searches, a little maze, you know, just some things for kids to interact with God's word in a creative way that parents can use for their kids, you know, because we're using it even to describe what a meek hero is, right? That, you know, blessed are the meek for they will inherit the earth. Well, how do you be a meek hero? Well, you love God, love others. Like, this is how you do it. And we want to teach young people that. And so when you have a ridiculously sick illustrator that is a Christian who loves what we're doing, a coloring book's a natural progression. And we partnered with our dear friend Simply Carrie, And she's just a phenomenal disciple of Christ who has a number of children. I don't even remember. I think she's up to like 6, 7, or 8 kids, and just loves pouring into them. You know, Carrie, sorry, I don't remember exactly how many children you have. One just joined the army, another one's getting ready for college, and then young on down. But, you know, she wrote this amazing article on raising Meek Heroes, like what this means to really pour into our children. And she's a homeschool mom, and she's done homeschool, helps for parents. And so we partnered with her to release this, and really wanting to show the body of Christ in motion, where we're using Jason, who's our illustrator, Carrie, who's just a mom who really wants to raise her kids for Christ, and the music, and just kind of bringing that all together into one package. And we launched that on today's Saturday, so yesterday, and have just really been blown away by the response.
Wow, that is amazing. I love how all the creative elements come together. It's incredible. I love it. Where can people find this coloring book to get it then? Where's it available for purchase?
You can get it off our website, our platform that we use, christcenter.us. Yeah. You can get it for $3.99.
$3.99. Yeah. So they can go right to christcenter.us. Yeah. It's on there in like 3 different places, but if you go right to the homepage, you'll see it there. If you go to christcenter.us/Meek Heroes, you'll find it there, and it's in our article section, so you can't miss it. Yeah. And then it's a free download right there, and you can just print it right out. It's all in printable PDF format, and we've already had a number of families where their young kids have colored it up, and it's pretty sweet. So we're hoping when we have more people download it, that we can get pictures of their kids, colored.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is available internationally, right?
Yeah, anyone who can access our website can. I've
already got people in mind I need to tell about this coloring book. I'm like a massive, get this! Cool. That's amazing. Love it.
No, that praise God for that. Yeah, and again, it's just like, we like to have fun, man, and we want to show people, like, look, like we want to make Christ accessible, if that makes sense, right? So it's like you want people to know the truth, and you have to get creative in your ways of doing it. Like, the gospel doesn't change, right? But the method may, because of how we're going to try to approach that. And at Youth for Christ, we have a saying, that we're anchored to the rock, but we're geared to the times. And so really just kind of looking at how can we get creative and find ways to really impact people for Christ. And we don't see an age limit on that. Like, I want my boys are 5, 3, and 1, and I want them now currently hearing as much of the word of God as they can. I didn't grow up with that, now I have that opportunity, and so it's a major blessing.
Amazing. I love this. This is exciting. Well, thank you for joining me today to just share your hearts, share your music, and sharing the journey and all the practical things that you guys are doing creatively. It's really amazing to hear what's going on over in the US that's actually impacting globally. Like, you've impacted.
Glory to God.
Okay, so it's very exciting. So thank you for joining me, guys, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, no doubt.
Pleasure.
Well, it's a major blessing. So
bye,
see
y'all
guys. Later. Peace.
Peace.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityxtra.co.uk.